Michelle live, and we are live taking on the change in cosmology that's going to turn your scientific thinking on its ear. Yeah, cosmology. And no, that's not the art of putting on lipstick, my friend. It's time for SCI TECH Tuesday.
Michelle Live podcast.
My Michelle Live.
Hey, glad that you could be spending part of your day with us. And I guarantee as you watch today, you're going to hear some things that are just going to blow your mind. Specifically, we're going to be talking about some scientific discoveries. And as we try to stay up on this program on Tuesdays on some of the latest scientific discoveries, we do that. And then we stand in delight and awe, because it seems the farther we go down this road and the more we discover, the more intelligence we see in the design of the universe, and more specifically, how this design speaks to and exhibits the characteristics of the God of the Bible. We're going to be looking at some changes some challenges to cosmology from the latest discoveries. And we have with us, of course, an expert in his field, astrophysicist Jeff Zweerink. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Michelle, looking forward to our conversation. Always enjoy our time to talk, and looking forward to what we get to talk about today.
Oh, yeah. It is, as I said, always pretty, it jazzes me. Not only because I'm kind of a geek and it's like, ooh, that's interesting, but like with every subject, that deeper connotation, that deeper meaning just explodes in your soul and mind. Let's talk about this particular challenge to cosmology that you wanted to share with us today.
Well, so there was a group of people who were just looking out, doing their research, and one thing in particular they were doing was as light. So there are things that are very, very far away from us in the universe. One of those things are quasars. In fact, when the term quasar stands for quasi-stellar source, because these things are incredibly bright, but they have no real structure to them, or no size. So they look like stars, but we found out that they're incredible distances away, and so that means they're incredibly bright, very powerful. We think they're now galaxies, where the heart of the galaxy has this black hole, massive, or stuff is falling onto the black hole, massive jet. Just really cool objects in and of their own right. But as the light from these quasars now propagates through the universe, again, they're quite a ways away from us in the universe, so as they propagate through the universe, we can actually look for signs that they are going through other stuff on their way to us. For example, as the light from the quasar will go through a cloud of gas, if the cloud of gas has magnesium in it, it will absorb certain wavelengths of light, and when it gets to Earth, we can tell what sort of stuff is in between us and this distant quasar. And so there was a group that actually looked for that signature, and they found a line of clouds, which are galaxies and clusters of galaxies, that is about 3.3 billion light years across. That's kind of a hard thing to imagine, but the size, if we were to go from here to the edge of the observable universe, is 45 billion light years. So this is 15 of these things that they found would actually go from here to the edge of the observable universe. So these are enormous structures. And that's what's really kind of cool, is just finding these enormous, massive structures by looking at this distant light in the universe.
Incredible structure, too, this kind of arc. But what I thought was fascinating is how it's observed. We look up in the sky and we can, with the naked eye, rudimentarily observe stars, but how this arc was discovered was quite different than just peering through a telescope.
Yeah, it really is, and that's kind of the way I would describe it is if you go out on a day where you look up in the sky, the sun's up there, but if you can't see the sun, you know something's obscuring it. So certain kind of clouds will absorb certain light, other kinds of clouds will absorb other light. And so by knowing that the sun's there and seeing how it appears, you can tell what's in between. That's effectively what they were doing here. It was looking for those clouds where there's a bunch of magnesium in it, it'll absorb it out. We know how much magnesium it was, or the wavelengths it was emitting, because there are other signatures that tell us that. And then we can just measure where are these magnesium lines being absorbed, and it tells us that there's this enormous structure. So it's the light passing through this other stuff that we're able to detect. I agree, it's just really fascinating.
It's crazy, geeky, cool, but then what it also does is kind of challenge what we've known about cosmology. It kind of brings as we turn the page and learn more in our nature book of science as we observe, it makes the things on the previous pages seem a little bit irrelevant and out of date.
Well, yeah, that's the beautiful thing about observing the universe, is that we always are getting more and more information that gives us a deeper understanding. And so, there are these cosmological models, and almost every cosmological model, since the Big Bang, has at its heart this idea that the universe is isotropic. That what that just means is that no matter what direction I look, it looks the same, at least when I get to large enough scales. And it's homogeneous, which means not so much which direction I look, but whatever chunk I would see would basically look the same. And so in our current cosmology, we've got gravity, which pulls stuff together. We've got this stuff called dark energy, which pushes stuff apart. We can actually calculate a size above which everything ought to look the same. Like I said, if dark energy is pushing things apart, if gravity is pulling things together, at some point in time, there's going to be a scale above which you can't get anything clustering in it, and it's just going to be smooth and homogeneous. And that's what's interesting about this, is because when you calculate, given our current understanding of cosmology, what that size is, it's about 1.2 billion light years. Now, if you remember, I just said this thing was 3.3 billion light years. So this thing is larger than that theoretical limit where everything ought to look the same. So the fact that we're seeing clumpiness or a structure that is 3.3 billion light years across, when our current calculations say nothing larger than 1.2 billion light years can be across, that says, all right, we're missing something, gives us something cool to go in and study.
Yeah, more cool things to study. And what that also reminds us is that when we have this idea that, we've got it all figured out, we've got the science on this, we know what we're doing, the more we learn, the less we know, Jeff.
Well, and they're honestly, I think I see kind of two errors, and I tend to make these. One is there's the error of thinking that, we got everything sorted out. And, there's numerous examples through the history of science where we thought, okay, we're just measuring the final details, we've kind of got it all mapped out, and then lo and behold, we'll come up with something new. One time we came up with the measurements that ultimately led to the development of quantum mechanics, and then we've got dark energy. I mean, there's all sorts of places where we thought we've got basically everything figured out, and then lo and behold, we find this thing that we just never even dreamed of. But there's another error in there of saying, okay, we found this new thing that doesn't fit. That means everything's wrong. And I find people in the Christian community that do both of those, or that do one or the other of those errors. And so I think what's important or the way I look at it, it's like we've got a lot of the details of the universe mapped out. We know that the universe is expanding. We know that it appears to have a beginning, that there's a great deal of uniformity in the universe. It's largely isotropic, largely homogeneous. But what this discovery tells us is that, or it actually adds more data to this conclusion, is that while we have a lot of the large scale or the large picture, there are still some details that we don't understand. And a lot of scientists actually find that aspect really exciting. The fact that something doesn't fit with our understanding, because it gives us an avenue to pursue even deeper, which I think is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool, and then having, if you're a scientist, delving deeper and being the person that gets to put your name on the look what we found, right? That's kind of fun too. I mean, it's to me that's like the Super Bowl of science right there. Where you have this spirit of competition and trying to dig things apart. So there's a lot of cool aspects to it. But it also brings a bit of a challenge to this idea that the universe just kind of, it kind of just happened. It brings a bit of a maybe an enlightenment to a possible God story.
And that to me is what I see in there. If, as we studied the universe, nothing ever made sense. It's like we'd see one thing and then the next day we see something new, or we kind of get this and then it all falls apart. That would speak to an existence that was chaotic, random, and unordered. But when we look at the universe, we can go out and make measurements and we can say, hey, we think this is a good idea, and then we can go test that and find, lo and behold, wait a second, yes, our data actually confirms that we're getting a deeper understanding. So it really does speak to a universe or a reality that our universe is a part of that is orderly and deliberate and intentional and mindful, which I would say points to God. But the other side of that is, and this is the new discovery part, is that for everything we discover, for all that we learn and all that we grow, we have not come close to exhausting all that there is to know.
Good point.
There's an orderliness and a structure which points to a mind or a rationality behind the universe, but there's also a depth of what we can know that points to an infinite existence beyond ours, which both of those, God, or in Christianity, those are attributes of God, that there's an infinitude behind God that we can explore forever, continue to learn, and never get to the bottom while we're still adding new pieces. But there's also a standard and orderliness, a structure, a character to God. And so Christianity really finds or provides a ready explanation for why our universe behaves that way and why we find it so fascinating to study it in that way.
I find it fascinating in that what it does for me is it takes my faith beyond just a hocus pocus fairy tale to something to evidence that suggests that what I have put my faith in is real. If it were to the contrary consistently, I would have to say, okay, this isn't any more real than the spaghetti monster. But when we continue to see scientific discoveries that in fact bolster a biblical narrative, it is something to get jazzed about. That is really interesting. But then something else you mentioned is that there's so much that we don't know. There's so much more to discover. We can spend our lifetime and our children's lifetime discovering, exploring, gaining understanding, and still we won't know the depths, the breadths, the heights, and the intellect that is woven into the universe. Mine, it's incredible. And something that has been fascinating me is trying to understand if there is purpose, and we see purpose throughout our planet, we see purpose throughout creation. I'm so fascinated by what some of the purpose is in each star, and the planets being so very different, and the space between the planets and this arc. A lot of these things we tend to, as we go down the road, Jeff, we tend to find that each one of these kind of have a purpose in keeping the universe going.
I think that's a good point, and I love your comment about as we go down the road, because in order to understand purpose, you actually have to understand something pretty well. I can't tell you the number of times I've been in working on something and it's like, what's this here for? It seems out of place, it seems random, and then as I get a bigger picture of how my house was put together, it's like, oh, that's why it's there. And so this, in some sense, this giant arc, there's a few other structures that are in this class of larger than our theoretical limit of our understanding. I think there's about 8 of them right now. And I don't know whether they have a purpose or not. Quite honestly, we don't understand them well enough to do that. But what I find fascinating is that we're almost driven to understand and say, okay, there's something important here. We need to understand this. And as we go in and understand this, very often that reveals that, yeah, there is a design behind it. For example, you could make an argument that if God wanted to create a universe, all he really needed was a sun, a moon, an earth, and that's about it. He can make that work. We can see things. We can operate. We can live. But he's created a trillion stars in the observable universe, some of which are far larger than our sun, many of which are far smaller than our sun. Some are very red, some are very blue. We look at those and say, well, that's just weird. Those don't seem to need to be there. But then you realize that one key feature of life is that it's built on carbon. And given the laws of physics of this universe, carbon is the only element that you can build life on. Well, you ask the question, where is carbon formed in our universe? It's not formed in the Big Bang. It's formed in the heart of a certain kind of star that requires the star to live and then blow this stuff out into the cosmos. And fluorine, which is, again, not just important to help us have strong teeth, it's actually important for life. And it's formed in a different kind of star. And gold and a lot of those heavy elements that we use for things, those are formed in a different kind of star. And so when we begin to look and see all of it, it's like, wow, there's this diversity. God could have done it very simply, but he's chosen a far bigger picture and then invited us into trying to understand what he's done. And if he hadn't invited us into that, science wouldn't exist, and none of this stuff we know, we would have had the joy of being able to discover. And I think in eternity, we're going to be doing the same thing forever, and we're never going to get tired because we're never going to run out of stuff to discover.
No, indeed not. And when you think of the life expansion of man on this planet and our needs, it would seem that the universe does have, it's like a supermarket of elements that we need to thrive and survive on planet Earth. So if it was, yes, could have God, just made a sun and a moon and an earth? Yes, but as he's chosen to use a universe full of all of these incredible mysteries, it would again seem like it's like a supermarket of the things that we need that continues to feed the life that we have here. I was just walking with my feet in the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, the beautiful white sands, and I'm realizing the faithfulness of the tides, the consistency of water on our planet, the uniqueness of what people can call this lonely planet in the vastness of the universe, and realize that the same power that keeps this earth turning, that is in control of some of those crazy elements from the arch to the blue suns, is the same power that keeps me in my life. And so when you ask the question, are we going to be okay? Look at the earth. It's okay. It's thriving in miraculous ways. So I think we're going to be okay too.
Your description and just your thought here, it just made me realize, in a very real sense, God could have just said, all right, here's a sun, here's an earth. In fact, he wouldn't have need to have a sun. He could do some other energy source. God's capable of doing whatever he chooses, if you will. But what struck me is that the way he created the universe actually demonstrates his care for us and his love for us in this sense, that he could have just made it to where we live. He comes, his son dies on the cross, everything happened. But he's actually put us in the midst of a far bigger picture, a far bigger environment that allows us to get a deeper picture of who he is. One of my tendencies, and I think there's a number of scientists who have this, is like, okay, if I can explain something, I've now got, I can kind of put a bow on it and I'm in control, and that becomes the extent of my universe, if you will. It's like, okay, I've got the things that I can control here. And God has put us in a situation where we get, if we're willing to do it, as we study the universe, we see that there's more and more, and there's far beyond anything we could ever dream of understanding entirely. And it gives us a little glimpse of who he is and how much he cares for us, because he didn't need to do that. He chose to do that so that we could know him better. And it really just communicates to me the depth of how important we are to him.
No, something you said there is really food for thought as you're watching today. So you are alluding to the idea that as we delve into the universe and study things way out there, or even deep inside of us, in the cells, wherever it is, each one of these disciplines and discoveries seem to lead us to a greater understanding, I'm hearing you say, of God?
Yeah, I really do think it does. I was thinking of various objections I've heard to people who said, well, why would I want to go to heaven? One of the objections is, well, I'm just going to get bored up there. I mean, everybody's just sitting around on a cloud playing a harp and, just singing all day. It's like, that's not going to be any, that's not going to be
I don't know. That sounds like heaven to me. I've been doing that at the beach here, and I'm like, this is great. Okay, but it's not for everyone.
Enjoyable, but at some point, if that's all you're doing, it's like, well, maybe there is more to that. And when we look at how God has revealed himself to us, he's revealed himself in a creation that we have been studying a book that, the Bible, for a few thousand years. We've got a lot of the big picture there, but we've studied it for 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years, if we include the Old Testament, and we've not begun to exhaust what there is to know about God in there. We've got a lot of the big picture, but there's always more, always deeper we can go. I find the same picture in creation. I mean, we've got the big picture, we kind of understand Big Bang cosmology and the expansion of the universe, and how various, how chemistry and biology work at some level, but there's so much more detail to be learned, and not just more adding more decimal places, stuff that we don't even know to think about yet is there. And so if that's true here in this creation, why would that be different in the new creation? That we can study creation, the new creation, for all eternity and still be discovering new fascinating stuff, because God is infinite and you can never exhaust an infinite amount of knowledge. And so this creation actually points us and helps us understand better who God is, and answers a lot of the snarky but kind of quick-witted objections to what Christianity is about, because Christianity has a depth that, because the God who we worship has this depth that can't be found.
Right? And when you think of God in the person of Christ, his work on earth couldn't even be fathomed. In fact, the Bible says that if we were to write, and in those days it wasn't on a computer desk, but even a computer, there wouldn't be a computer big enough to handle all of the things that he did, the miracles, the ways that he touched people's lives during the time he chose to walk among us. But the Bible says that the whole world could not contain the volumes of books that would have to be written to cover all of the aspects of just Jesus and his time here on earth. So if that's true of 33 years of God dwelling among us, how much more of an eternity past and eternity present, eternity future, right?
Amen and amen.
Come on. I mean, it's exciting. And so that's why I just love getting together with you, your colleagues, other scientists from other organizations, and talking about what we're seeing in the news being revealed from scientific discovery, because inevitably it continues to point us to a God story. But something else in this story, Jeff, that we talked about was the fact that it challenges what we've already perceived as being true about the universe. That's kind of tough because people don't like being challenged. I mean, we've seen that with Darwinian evolution and how we continue to learn more than Darwin knew so many years ago, but we want to hang on to that old science because it's what's comfortable, like an old shoe. Just buy a new pair of shoes. Come on, be like a girl. Buy new shoes.
and it makes it challenging to do, but I really appreciate is that, so you read the popular articles about this, and this giant arc, it challenges and undermines fundamental assumptions about our, it kind of makes it sound like, we're just throwing everything out. What is really going on is that we've built a model of the universe, and in this model, these certain things are true. Well, we've now come along and we've measured the universe, and we say, okay, this thing is there. And granted, people will go out and say, all right, is this really an accurate observation? And they're going to go and confirm and test whether the observations are done well and they're not a fluke or other things like that. But once that observation says, okay, yes, this structure exists, notice that none of the scientists are going and saying, well, we're not going to deal with that data. That data is irrelevant. This is our model, and we've got it, and that's the right way to look at it. No, what they do is they say, okay, this data tells us about reality. If my model is wrong, I need to adjust my model to conform to reality.
There you go.
And that's kind of an unpopular thing today, because we talk about everybody having their own truth, and this is true for me and not for you. and the reality of it is, there is a reality. And people who are healthy, in my assessment, are the ones who say, okay, this is reality. I'm going to accept reality and adjust to it and figure out how to live in reality, rather than say, I'm going to live over here because I like this bubble or I like this way of looking at things better. If this way of looking at things doesn't correspond to reality, a healthy person will look and say, all right, I need to adjust the way I look. If God is the ultimate reality, that's what we're called to do as Christians. Not, I like looking at it this way. How is God, and how can I adjust the way I think about to what He's revealed?
Ouch! Now you're getting personal.
We see that in our theology as well.
Yeah, now you're getting personal, Jeff.
That's the way reality works.
Ladies and gentlemen, this conviction moment brought to you by Jeff Zweerink of Reasons to Believe. Yeah, this is where it gets to the meat of the matter. The things that we talked about, they're fascinating, and it's fun, and it's geeky. But this is why this program has meat, and instead of just, we have the hot dog, not just the mustard, because we want to get to that deeper story. So we talk about these things. You reveal, wow, there really is extraordinary design, mathematics, reason, purpose in the universe. What does that really say? What are the implications? Then you go down a different level and you realize that the God of the Bible most closely represents the most reasonable explanation for what we see. And then you see that there's really no contradictions in the Bible. There's nothing that would, be old science and we laugh at and say, oh yeah, the Bible says the earth is flat. And then you stand in awe. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Just understanding, whoa, God is amazing. That's big, that's huge. But the deeper level here is exactly what you said. We realize that there are implications, and now you got to take on those personal implications. And that's where science inevitably leads us to that aspect of faith that doesn't just talk about the universe, but affects our lives as individuals. I'd like your final thoughts on that.
I think that's a pretty powerful point, what you said right there at the end, is that we can have all of these pictures of how things work and what do we do, but ultimately, if once we've got who God is or what reality is, it has to change how we think about things, because we want to align with that. We want to find the truth. We want to find what's real and live there. And if we're a Christian, that's obviously got major implications. But even if you're not a Christian, it has big implications, because we ought to want to find what's really true and align ourselves with that, because that is the only thing that will endure through time, is whatever is true. That's what we want to find. That's what we want to align with. And that's going to be challenging, and I spend my fair share of time avoiding the truth. I'm not immune to that just because I'm a scientist or something like that. But as we grow, what we can be confident of is that as we align ourselves with the truth, that will be a foundation that will never be shaken. And I look forward to understanding that truth forever as we go through eternity living with God.
Yeah, I'm going to be hanging with you in the geeky section. Absolutely. Once I'm off my cloud playing, I'm not maybe not so much a harp, but definitely my guitar. I hope my guitar makes it to heaven. I love my guitar. Yeah, a lot of heady things that we've been talking about today as you've been listening. And, if you need your brain to keep up, I'm going to challenge you to try something. It's called Calitrin. Calitrin is a collagen supplement. Our bodies lose collagen like exponentially from our teens on up. But the first thing you'll notice when you take Calitrin is a clarity of mind, and that can help you keep up with people like Jeff Zweerink. You need all the help you can get. You can find more information at mymichellelive.com. Jeff, I love you all there at Reasons to Believe. So as you pass people in the hall, high five them for me, say Michelle said hi, and let them know we appreciate all you do there.
Well, thanks. I will do that, Michelle, and I just enjoy the opportunity to be here with you and actually talk about these things with a group of people I don't normally have access to.
Yeah, God bless you, man, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you. You don't have to dance, Jeff.
For more fun, go to mymichellelive.com.
And that's a wrap.